Well, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Just gonna go. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. We're back this week with another episode of the In Transition podcast. We are so excited to be with Julia today. Julia Claeys Freeland. Am I saying your name right? That was the one thing I was going to ask you. No. She's like, no, tell me.
The look on her face was like, no.
She's like, no, say it. Tell me the right way to pronounce your last name.
Well, what's really funny about how you just pronounced that is that you actually did my middle name. Great. That's actually my maiden name. But what's funny is you said Freeman instead of Freeland. And
Freeland.
Which is like, it's a very easy last name. But what's so funny about it is that when I got married, I was gifted a photo book. And the photo book was engraved, and on it said,
oh God,
Freeman.
no.
Freeman. So
you're not the first person.
She's not like Morgan Freeman.
Oh my God.
Is it because I just saw a Morgan Freeman movie over the weekend?
Which one?
A Good Person. That's a whole other conversation. Very good movie.
So like, did you have to get like a new engraved book? I'm like kind of still stuck on that. Did you just, because I don't know if you could tell a person that got you the gift, like, hey, thanks, this is wrong.
Oh yeah, well, it was my sister-in-law, which was even funnier. So like from kind of removed.
Oh no.
Okay. You know, my sister's husband's sister. So, you know, it was pretty, but at the same time, it's just really funny because really where it started was my sister telling her the wrong name. And that's where it's funny. So
your own sister?
So my own sister did it. And so it was just so comical. So I actually kept it because I think it's funny. And besides the fact I got divorced. So, you know.
Yeah. So this is off to a really good start so far. We're just gonna roll with it. Everyone's already laughing. Freeland, Julia Freeland, but I got the middle
Freeland, like America, baby.
Yep, I love it. Okay,
well, like we should do like a hybrid of the last names. Freeland. That's your new name, Julia. You're welcome.
Julia's here. We're really excited to be talking to her. I've spoken to Julia a number of times on some of the topics she's going to talk about, and they're always fascinating. She's going to be talking about going from striving to be perfect to embracing being wrong today, which I think is going to be incredible, because what woman has not been a perfectionist at some point in their life, if not still a perfectionist? But a little bit about Julia before we get started. After rising through a trifecta of trials over 10 years, Julia noticed a pattern to how she kept emerging to a version of self that was better equipped to thrive in the conditions of her life. Once she realized that her newly developed capabilities could have helped her avoid much of the suffering she had endured, Julia became obsessed with helping others understand how to get through the hard parts of life easier. Don't we all want to be able to do that?
Every day.
After 4 years of research and experimentation, she developed the Humergence model, a powerful guide to help humans rise through adversity faster and consistently realize positive change, which we'll talk a little bit about today. Founded on human nature and backed by neuroscience, psychology, biology, and learning science, the Humergence model is as robust as it is simple. It has been proven time and time again to help people navigate change, improve relationships, and find hope and balance in disruptive times. Today, Julia shares the lessons of her journey and Humergence model on stages across the country, inspiring leaders to harness their human nature so they can show up as their best selves and get through the hard parts of life easier. Audiences appreciate her gift for taking the complex and making it simple and memorable through compelling stories and interactive experiences. She's known to be bold, approachable, quick thinking, and humorous, which I have gotten to experience, and her talks will inspire your people to take brave steps towards creating a better future. Welcome to the podcast, Julia. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor and fun to be with you, fun people too. I'm like, geez, I think that last part just describes all of us.
Yeah, I mean, Corey and I are very much in a mode right now where we are trying to take brave steps towards creating a better future for ourselves and the people we bring into our realm.
World.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we like to start every episode with this question around what was the catalyst for this transition for you from striving to be perfect to embracing being wrong?
So, like I said in the intro there, I had like a full decade worth of really what I call lifequakes, things that brought me to my knees and asked me to really let go of my perception and understanding of how the world worked and who I was and who others were, in order to be able to rise through to a better version of myself. Which, that better version of self, it didn't mean necessarily that I was stronger. It just meant that I was more aware of who I was, and I had adapted my understanding of things so that I was better equipped to thrive in the current conditions of my life, which were changed conditions. So that's really what I'm about, is about helping people understand that they have the power within them to be able to rise through the adversity in front of them, and that by understanding our human nature, we can start being able to understand how we're getting in our own way, and then take conscious, intentional steps towards responding to what our human nature asks of us, so that we can get to that new adapted version of life, or of person, who we are. So for me, those hard knocks came in the form of divorce, a massive health issue for my daughter, and finally, and the one I'll talk about more specifically, because this is a business like podcast, is that it's more about getting fired. And so I was in my dream job. So I had just relaunched my career after taking 10 years to be with my kids. And I relaunched back into learning and development. That was my background, and creating leadership and customer service and sales, and you name it, every kind of training that we could design for customers that were looking for it. That was my background. I have my master's in education, and am passionate always about developing people. So I got into this job, and there's a lot to that piece of it in and of itself, because it was so challenging to just relaunch after 10 years. But I finally did get myself into a job that was this perfect fit, and I very quickly accelerated, got 3 promotions in the course of a year. Wow. And was back at my director title within a year, and had doubled my salary, and everything was great. It was wonderful. And I had just gotten off of a biggest project I'd ever managed. It was a $500,000 project for Sony Pictures Entertainment. I had just been told by one of the top senior executive presidents of the company that hands down the program he had just been through with me, which we were piloting and I had designed, was the best leadership program he had ever been a part of. So highest accolades of my career. Yeah. The CEO of my smaller company and I were 2 peas in a pod. I was her right-hand person. And she had entrusted me with all of the revenue generation projects that were currently on the plate, while she went off to try to create bigger avenues of revenue, and also to transform the company. So we were really trying to change things. And what was happening is that she was seeing that the world was changing, and that there were new ways that our customers needed us to respond. So I took on the main stuff. She went off and did kind of pitching some new stuff. And by the time I got done kind of tying up a lot of our stuff, she had landed some big projects and was ready and anxious for me to come to help her out with it. Now, I'm not somebody who I do well when I have control over what I get to do. I know, just give me the goal and I will make sure that we get there. And of course, I'm going to listen to the customer, and I want to know what it is they want. But I also trust that I have a lot of experience, a lot of success, and a lot of education to back all that up. So I'm a trusted partner in that way. Okay. And that's the way I was looking at it. Well, it turns out that what my CEO had sold and what the customer was asking for was radically different than anything I had ever seen before. Radically different than anything that anybody had ever built before or designed before. It was a very new way of thinking about how you build learning and development. And for me, my response was, nope, hold on. You guys are not doing this right. You're making a big mistake. So I was coming from a perspective of being the expert. I had just come off of my biggest accolades of my career. And I had lots of evidence of success. I had a master's in education from UC Berkeley. And so I had all kinds of evidence. And by the way, I was the person who had the experience at the company. I was the person who built everything. So it wasn't that anybody else, it was me and my team that were building everything. So it wasn't that anybody else had this same set of experience. So they didn't ask me for any advice about selling this or the way they're doing it. So I came in with the idea that I'm going to help them. And unfortunately, what happened is that I ended up, without knowing it, looking like I was fighting the progress that the company was trying to make.
Oh. Wow.
And I thought, from my perspective, I was doing everything I could to save them because I loved my company. I loved my CEO. I loved my job. I was doing everything I could to save them from making a mistake. And over the next 3 months, there's a lot of back and forth, me thinking I was doing the right thing, them thinking I was just doing nothing but getting in the way. I was all I was trying to do, which all that did is make me want to try to prove that I was right, prove that I knew the right way, prove that I was the expert, which made it look more and more and more like I wasn't flexible, like I wasn't interested, I wasn't curious, I wasn't on board with the team. So by 3 months in, I got demoted, but I still loved this company and they still believed in me. So I still stayed and I got a coach. But it took the coach working with me a lot for me to finally see that the world was changing in such a dramatic way that my former understanding of the way my job was supposed to be, what it meant to be a good learning and development person, that was going away. A good learning and development person or an instructional designer or a senior consultant in developing learning, whatever you want to put the title in, but that whole definition of what it meant to really prepare and be a good professional development person had radically changed in a future that the tech company we were working with was trying to get to. And so our old way of operating didn't mesh anymore.
So it was like a paradigm shift was occurring, and
there's a massive paradigm shift. Yeah.
And you were still somewhat in the old paradigm at that point.
Very much, and completely blind, like completely blinded by my expertise.
Okay.
Blinded by my perfection, like that I actually did, I was perfect. I did it right. I did it. I had all these accolades. I had
all the receipts.
You're like, I can back this all up.
This is what I'm saying, and I can prove that I'm right. Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, that wasn't helpful. That expertise coming to it, like saying, I know, wasn't helpful. Now, what is it that we're all trained to do in school? What is it that we're all trained to do when we're in business today? We're not trained to say we don't know.
Trained to say I have all the answers.
Yeah.
And if I don't have all the answers, I'm hired.
Yeah.
That's not why I get hired. I don't get hired for not knowing. Clients don't pay me for coming and go like, I don't know. What do you want to do?
Like, what do you think?
Well, I mean, and this brings up such an interesting topic that I think is somewhat of a hot topic right now around what's more important in a working environment, the hard skills or the soft skills, the things that you know versus the things you can learn, or the way that you show up in a role. Because I very much believe it's more about the person and their soft skills. Like, a lot of the hard skills can be taught. I can teach you how to do these tasks if you don't already know how to do them. but how you show up and operate in your day to day, your presence, your leadership ability says a whole lot more to me about the person you are than what you actually know and what you can do. What do you think about all of that?
I agree full-heartedly. When I am speaking, the reason I've gone to some university to speak with them, and specifically to education programs that are teaching our future educators, I'm talking to them about, here's the skill sets that we've been teaching for generations. And those skill sets and our capabilities to teach them aren't keeping up with how fast technology is changing.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is that not even universities, high schools and universities are not able to prepare kids with the hard skills that they need for the jobs, because 65% of the jobs children today will hold they don't even exist yet.
Yeah.
And so how do you train kids for jobs that don't exist? And so if you look at it from, and what's happening is that tech companies who are creating this new technology that now needs people to work to use the new software, the new apps, the new, and support it all, they're having to create their own academies to teach the tech skills, because universities and high schools cannot keep up with it. So now you see Salesforce and Google and Amazon and Microsoft, they all offer free training on their programs, and you get certified through it. And kids could like jump from high school, go get certified there for free, and then go get a job.
Yep.
And that is a much faster way to get to a job.
Yeah.
If you're just relying on hard skills. Now, that only helps those students or people for so long. That's still operating under the principle that I need to be an expert. That's not operating under the principle of I'm going to figure it out as we go, and that you, customer, and we're partners in figuring it out. And I'm happy to say that I'm starting to see more recruiters think more that way. Actually, not so much recruiters. It's just, hold on.
That would be nice. It's like,
What
really?
What I'm
It's recruiters,
seeing,
Julia.
yeah, it's not recruiters. Actually, recruiters are still doing off the hard skills. Now, granted, the recruiters are just listening to what their internal customers are asking them to recruit for.
Yeah.
But I am starting to see more leaders and business owners asking for more of the attitude. Like, I want the attitude, I want the mindset, I want the capability to feel like they can be flexible, they can be adaptable, they can find balance within uncertainty, they can keep learning despite ambiguity or keep making progress. That's what I want. And I can teach the hard skills. They're figuring that out more and more. Now, the connect hasn't quite gotten to recruiters or to the lower middle management and then into recruiters, because it's got to get there before it's going to get to colleges and universities. And so that we start flipping what it is that we teach in the colleges and universities, which it makes it so it's more focused on teaching the capabilities to be self-directed learners and understand how to keep yourself stable, even in discomfort, and even in that realm of knowing that you are not going to know what you're doing, being willing to be wrong, because you're going to take a risk. That's what we need. We need people that are willing to take risks, to try new things, to innovate, to realize that it's okay to be a beginner, and that really the new life cycle for a career is going to be being a beginner again and again and again and again, and embracing that and thinking that's normal. Letting go of that linear idea of our career that we just keep getting promoted until we're in a place where we can sit back and say, we're authority. Sweet. And now we get to just be the person that everybody comes to us for expert. I mean, look at you two. You guys are venturing into this world of podcasting and own business stuff. And that is a great example of being willing to jump in, be a beginner, and learn as you go. So
I mean, I think there's something to everything, to Lauren's point, and to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, Julia. Like, in this journey that Lauren and I are on, there's a lot of stuff, not just with the podcast stuff, but just other things that we have in the works, where there's a lot of gray. there's like, we're being introduced to all these new things and these new bright and shiny objects, and we love them, but it's like, okay, we don't know how to use them. We don't know how to incorporate this into what we have planned. And so there is a lot of ego checking at the door, and just, okay, well, like I was talking to her yesterday, I was looking at this new platform that we were looking at, and I'm just like, yeah, I signed up for an orientation because I have no clue how to use this. I just bought it. I think it'll be cool, but I have no clue how to use it. Oh, wow. Thank God they have a YouTube channel. Guess what I'm watching this weekend, because there's so much power in knowledge, but just the ability to keep humbling yourself and just saying, I don't know, but I'm going to find out, or I'm going to work with you and we're going to find a solution together in a corporate space. Me personally, I think that just further solidifies the relationship that you can have with a client, because you feel invested, the client feels invested, and you're working towards a common goal together. And I think a lot of corporations, leaders, recruiters, whatever you want to call it, they're kind of missing that boat. They are.
Yeah, and I'd like to piggyback on what you're saying is, I think resourcefulness is a like magical thing for someone to possess. Like,
Yeah.
I appreciate when people are like, I don't have all the answers, but I'm resourceful enough to learn it, find someone who can help, I can leverage someone else's talent. And it's kind of what Corey and I have been doing, because we're trying, like she said, to kind of check ego at the door and say, we don't have all the answers. We know, because of what we're doing, it's very community driven, that the community is going to dictate a lot of what happens. And we need to just be listening and learning and be able to pivot and move with the ebbs and flows of those members in that community. So I think it's kind of the antithesis to wanting to be a perfectionist. Yeah. And this would be a perfect segue into talking more about what you do in Humergence, but I don't want to abandon the perfectionist piece just yet, because I feel like that's such a critical piece to dive a little bit further on, because it's the thing that gets in the way for so many women of taking those risks, taking that next step, that wanting to be right. So I'm wondering if we can kind of backpedal your story a little bit into that moment of you're being faced with that perfectionism and basically people telling you like, no, we're going to do it a different way, and your resistance. Like, what was your relationship to perfectionism at that point? And when did it shift? Like, did you even realize what level of perfectionism
no
possessed?
No, not at all. It's taken me quite a long time to figure that out. And I feel the way I tell stories about my lifequakes is I feel life was coming along and going, tapping me on the shoulder gently and saying like, a couple things here and there, going, change your ways. You think you're doing this the right way, you're not. And then eventually it started hitting really hard. And I still think that I'm extremely stubborn. Like I'll definitely say that I'm stubborn. And unfortunately, a lot of success will in your background will if your childhood is filled with success, which mine was. I was like salutatorian of my class, and I was, I had all that technically actually. Yeah, so I was second. I was not first, I was second.
That's pretty good still though.
Yeah, you get blindsided by this idea that if you just put effort in, you can get it right. And I also was somebody that was really into math and science because I liked the idea that I could get a right answer or a wrong answer. And if I worked hard enough, I'd get the right answer. I hated right. And now I'm writing books, of course. And so I had a major pivot that happened over the course of those 10 years and the 5 years of research after it. But in this specific story dealing with my firing, there was a place that like I got demoted, and then I got this coach, and then I had this whole experience. Well, I mean, I was breaking down, major breakdown. Like I was not functioning well at all in this, because I seriously felt like, okay, well, I'll do it this way. Like I was I was all about solving it, figuring it out. Well, try this way, and then there would be a wall. And then, well, how about this way? And there'd be a wall and another wall. You know, it was constant, like nothing I tried was working. It was all making it worse.
Mm.
And I was blind to understanding how. So there's a magic place in all human stories, which I call the point of transition, which is when humans finally let go of their preconceived ideas that they understand anything. They let go of their belief that they know how to get through anything. And they just let go and kind of fall away and just fall to the ground or whatever it is. And then there's this moment where you choose to say, all right, I know nothing. Let's learn. And for me, even my relationship with this coach that had been hired for me, who was also a coach for like the whole company, I still was battling him, but then there got to be this point where I knew, like, I'm done, I'm quitting, like I'm out, because I obviously can't do anything right. And it was very much in this blame me, like oh, terrible, awful me. Like I had shifted to going to, I'm an awful, terrible person.
Oh.
And saying, like, I know what, I know all the things that I do wrong. And I was very victim-y.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually I did get to that point though, where I just said, like, I'm done. And I let go in complete and total frustration. I wasn't doing this like, yeah, I know that this is the doorway to better. It was in complete and total, utter.
You're just tired.
Breakdown.
Yeah, I was destroyed.
Yeah.
That I let go. And I honestly, in my head, I feel like my coach kind of went, here's my hand.
Oh, wow.
Are you gonna, will you follow? Now, this was really hard for me because I grew up in a family that was, my mother was very much like, don't follow men, like to do your own thing, be a strong woman. And, and so that idea that I actually went, okay, I will hold your hand and I will do what you ask me to do. That was a huge pivot point for me to really let myself follow instead of lead, to trust that somebody else was going to help me walk out of this bad situation.
Wow.
And that is when I suddenly started seeing the world that I had been blind to. I was like, oh my God. So, there's this great TikTok video of this baby who has vision issues, and little one, and they finally put
the glasses
on, and the kid's just crying, and then the glasses go on. It's just your eyes, her eyes get so big. She's like, oh,
this is what I've been missing.
Yeah,
I can see.
Yeah. So that was kind of this moment that I have. And that's what happens at this point of transition. When people get there, they finally let go. You have the capacity, suddenly you're curious about everything. You want to, like, it's like you're seeing everything in the world differently and new. And for me, my epiphany came because I was like, oh my God, it is not technology or learning hard skills of any kind that is our challenge. The challenge is that we have all been trained and programmed and continue to be reinforced with this idea that we need to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But that mindset does not serve us at all when we're trying to innovate and walk away from how things have been. And we want to try to become relevant in a future world that's being created as we speak.
Yeah. We
need to actually embrace that being wrong is a part of the journey, that getting it wrong is a part of the journey. Okay. And that we have to lean into just experimentation. And for me, the big epiphany was humans aren't ready for this. We don't teach humans how to be okay with change. We don't teach humans with the skill sets they need to be okay with uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And because of some of my prior lifequakes, I actually knew that from my personal life, what it to do that. And so I thought, oh my gosh, I'm ready. I'm going to jump. And that's when I started my company. Not knowing, I knew conceptually what they needed to learn when I started to do my programs, but I literally taught it as I went. I learned as I went. And so that for me was my huge leap into the unknown, to really throwing myself into embracing being wrong and going, I might get this wrong, but let's learn together.
That's incredible.
And
I'm like, I just want to call out a couple points there, because there was a couple things that I heard in that I think are so important to anyone listening, especially if you identify as a perfectionist on any level, is that it's almost in those moments of total friction or tension like you had in your job, where you almost doubled down on the perfectionism.
Oh yeah.
Until
totally
you
did.
get to the point where there is nowhere to go but to fully surrender to the fact that I'm not going to be perfect. I don't have all the answers.
Yeah,
and I'm done.
I kind of
That
feel
done
like,
moment.
I kind of feel like when you got to that point, Julia, where you were just like, I think that some perfectionists get into the space of like, okay, where you're being constantly challenged. I think, well, at least when I get into a perfectionist state, I'm like, oh, okay, challenge accepted. I'm gonna win. Like, I do not like losing. I'm gonna win.
Gauntlet laid. Let's go.
Yep, let's go.
Yeah, it's like, let me take off my watch. Let me take off my earrings.
You think I can't? Oh, let me show you.
Watch me. Yeah. So I just, I totally identify with what you're saying, that it's like, you just get into this space where it's like, no, I'm right. I'm always right. I have to be right. So it turns into, I have to be right, as opposed to it's okay to be wrong. Yeah.
And how much more learning and growth is there in the being wrong?
Yeah.
Because when you're right, it assumes that you know everything. There is nothing else to learn.
Further
there is nowhere to go.
Yeah, it's further validation that you're still perfect. You know everything. Why am I here?
So let's talk about let's talk about human nature in that. Because a lot of your work is around human nature. Like, why do we do these things?
Yeah. So what I learned is that we're all familiar with or lots of people are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yep.
And at the base of it is what?
What is it?
So like your immediate security, house,
your
roof
house,
over your head, shelter,
roof over your head, clothes on your back, food in your stomach.
Yeah. So it's safety and security. And when people are stuck in that place, gloves off, I'm ready. They're in battle mode. They're like, I'm just trying to survive what's happening to me. Just trying to survive every day. Now, we know from brain science now that when you're in that state of survival, your amygdala is in a hijack mode, and it is trapping your capacity to critical think. It's narrowing your focus in so that what you're hearing and you're seeing and the capacity you have to understand is only threat-based. And so everything you're experiencing as you're moving through your day, no matter if that's at work or at home or at school, everything you're sensing and picking up, it's threat. And even if it's a kind of threat, you're like, no, that's a threat. Like, you just see threats. So you're in constant battle mode. And you know people like this. You've seen people. You might even felt yourself be in this mode where everything that you say, doesn't matter if you're saying like, oh, you look beautiful today, threat. Like, they think like it's like,
that's supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. You're lying to me. You're trying to get to me. You're trying to manipulate me in some way. Like, what is it you're after?
Yeah.
So when we're in that fight or flight mode, it's very difficult for us to be open to any idea.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what I work with people on first, every single time I'm working with individuals, for coaching one-on-one, it's always about, let's figure out what's going on in your personal life, so we get to a place where you feel at least some sort of some stability and safety, both with me and also just in your life. Let's buy you the space to be able to think bigger. And for me, with my 3 life breaks that I had, I noticed that there was a pattern to how I kept on rising, how I would get to a better place. And I thought, that's really interesting. And I noticed that, at this epiphany moment when I'm in my work setting and I'm about to get fired or I'm going to quit, which happened about at the same time. Basically, they beat me to it by a few hours. So,
Okay. But you're probably like, oh, I wanted to be the
I
one.
wanted to win that one.
I wanted to win this battle.
I don't, yeah.
Battle to win.
I was fine. It was fine. But it was interesting. But I had this epiphany moment that was happening before that. I was like, oh my God, there's a pattern. And I think I know how to help people get through this faster. So when you feel like you're at that point of transition, when things are just, you're so frustrated, you're beyond frustrated, that you're ready to just say, I give up. How do we help people rise to a place where they can look back and go, geez, Louise, I was blind to that.
Yeah.
So what I noticed is that pattern followed our 4 dimensions of human nature. And when I looked at other people and I started reading about post-traumatic growth and started looking at therapy and different ways of therapy, I started realizing when you talk to people who have been through a lot of emotional trauma or physical trauma in their past, but have risen to a better place where they can look back and say, they can actually even see the trauma they've been through as a gift, that they learned something, they've become a wiser version of themselves. When you talk to those people about how they got through their experience, you see the same pattern. And I thought, whoa, why aren't we talking about this? Why isn't everybody seeing this? So the pattern that I saw is based on the 4 dimensions of humans, which, do you guys know the 4 dimensions? I bet you can come up with them. So common in psychology and in philosophy, like back from like time of Plato to even like Stephen Covey. I think he mentions it in his book. So
tell us, because we're not going to claim to have the answers here.
We're learning.
We're learning.
So physical.
Okay.
And that's that first space, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of thing. That's in there, right? So physical.
Yep.
Social, emotional.
Okay.
Mental, and spiritual. Those are the 4 dimensions of humans.
In like a hierarchy?
No hierarchy. That's
just
just the 4 dimensions.
Okay.
But I did just say them in the pattern that I noticed. So what was interesting is that for me, the first shift was, one, you had to get to that point of transition where you suddenly you open up your mind to new, to different. You're like, okay, obviously I have failed here. Like I'm done. I've given up. I can't do this anymore. So the first stage is to really believe that different is possible. That's the first stage you got to get through. I think of that as the spiritual side of things. It's like, are you willing to seek new meaning?
Wow, I like how you put that. I like that.
So once you're able to seek new meaning, now you've opened the door to like, okay, maybe I'm wrong. And this we'll return to this. I'll go through the whole little 4 stages, but we're going to return to that one because it's so specific to the conversation of this podcast.
Yep.
So you seek new meaning, and then the very next thing you need to do for yourself, and this is for your children, your spouse, the people you're leading, the very next thing you should be focusing on, if you want to help people through change, if you want to help them rise through adversity, is help them establish that sense of physical safety.
Yeah.
And the physical safety, it comes around like it can be everything from your physical health, your mental health, your financial health, your housing. It's that am I just okay? Do I still have my job?
Yeah.
What I bring to the company, is that still valuable? Tell me that, leader. Let me know that I'm at least still valuable. Yeah. And that I still have a job and that it's safe, creates psychological safety. But we hear about that a lot.
Yep.
So then the next stage is social emotional. It's that connection piece. So let me know that I'm like, am I doing this by myself? Or am I together with, do I belong? And then the other piece of that, though, if you yourself are growing, you need to let those people in. You need to not just see your perspective. how do you, and this is in reference to my book, like take your shoes off first. How do you take your perspectives, put them off to the side so that you can really hear and understand how somebody else is seeing the world? Because that is going to start opening up breakthroughs so that you can see what you've been missing. So you seek new meaning, physical safety. Then we have the connection piece. The next piece is you're going to naturally, once you have the connection and you've got some new ideas percolating, you're going to want to naturally start trying new things. Like I want to do something. Mm-hmm. Now I'm kind of at the point where like, okay, I feel like I got it. I'm prepared. Now I want to go do something. And then that progress place, that's when you really have to be embracing being wrong. Because now it's time for experimentation and exploring and going further and saying like, all right, well, does this work? How about this? Does this work? I built off of the ideas that I just learned. Does this all work? And now this is when you're navigating, getting through that adversity, but you feel strong because you already know you're safe and you've got connections and other people helping you. The next piece is back to spiritual again, where it's like, okay, now I've found what works. I've experimented and I've found a few things, and I'm going to pull from those new ways of working, pull from those new ways of relating to the person that I'm having difficulty with. Trying to figure out new ways of, solving a problem that we're struggling with, whatever it is. And now I've created new meaning. So we've achieved a wiser version of self because we've gone through this journey that's in alignment with our human nature. And now we can look back and say, wow, I'm stronger than I thought I was. I actually do have the capacity to live in constant uncertainty and still find joy.
Thank you so much for tuning in to part 1 of this conversation. We appreciate our listeners more than you could ever know. Stay tuned for part 2 coming soon. In the meantime, if you liked any part of what you heard, please, please, please do us a favor and follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're willing to go a step further, we would love for you to leave us a review and send this episode to a friend that you feel would be served by it in any way. We are so excited to finally share more about Catalyst, the community we are building in conjunction with this podcast. Our mission with Catalyst is to create an authentic, safe, and inclusive space for heart-centered, growth-minded, multi-passionate women to navigate their life's transitions, all by building meaningful relationships, learning from one another, and growing into the best version of themselves, and maybe even making the world a little bit better in the process. If you're interested in becoming a founding member of Catalyst, we would love to learn more about you and have you apply at wearecatalyst.social. Check it in the show notes. We only have a limited number of spots for this founding member round, so be sure to get your application in soon. Again, the website to apply is wearecatalyst.social. We look forward to the possibility of getting to know you on a deeper level and supporting you in navigating your life's transitions. We cannot wait to have you join us for the next episode. Until then, we encourage you to lean into your community and embrace the growth that inevitably happens when you're in transition. See you next week.